Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of What's Driving Token Prices. I'm your host, Katie Talati, Director of Research at Arca. For those of us joining for the first time, I'm responsible for identifying and analyzing digital asset and blockchain opportunities for Arca's funds. As part of our research, my team and I examine token prices and the market events that act as catalysts for price change. Based on our research and market events over the past week, here are some notable token price movements and what we think drove these moves. As a reminder, this commentary is not intended to be investment advice, investment research, or an investment recommendation. Please consult your investment professional for your own circumstances. Hashtag DYOR. Hey guys, it's a new week. It's been very busy so far, actually. I've got some really cool, interesting news items to share with you. More broadly, we've obviously seen some, cool partnership announcements. Google announced that they're going to be using Coinbase this morning. Of course, I've forgotten the other thing I was going to mention, but like I said, things are kind of moving and grooving over here. So first up this week, we can talk about Apecoin. So this literally just happened yesterday, but and the story is still unfolding. But Yuga Labs, which is the creator of the Bored Ape Yacht Club and the owner of the intellectual property for CryptoPunks and Meebits, which are the other really popular, really high value NFT collections. They're being investigated by the SEC, according to reports. So according to these reports, Yuga Labs is facing a probe over whether the digital assets that they've issued are securities and if they should be treated like stocks, specifically around Apecoin. So if you're not familiar with like a little history of Yuga Labs and Bored Ape Yacht Club. So the Bored Ape Yacht Club was a NFT collection that was created a couple years ago and ended up becoming very popular, very high value. They ended up creating another spinoff of it called the Mutant Ape Yacht Club. There's also the Kennel Club Yacht Club. So there's a bunch of different variations on this. So Yuga Labs was the creator of these IPs. They decided over time that in order to add more value to the NFTs, besides just being static pictures that are one of one, that they would create a metaverse of their own called Otherside, and that in order for Otherside to kind of be its own economy, it would need a token, which is how Apecoin came about. So Apecoin was airdropped to basically all the NFT holders. That was earlier this year. They ended up having a land sale as well. So a lot that has been going on. But as a result, I guess it has come under the SEC scrutiny, for all these different kind of sales and airdrops and whatnot. So still, like I said, there's not much that we know other than there is a probe ongoing, and that the token unfortunately has reacted unfavorably to this. It traded down about 12% on the news and is down like 12% for the week. All right, next we have Binance Smart Chain. So you probably have actually seen the reports from this, but layer one protocol Binance Smart Chain, which is backed by Binance and the BNB token. So they suffered a $600 million exploit last Thursday. Unsurprisingly, it was another bridge hack. I don't know why we're surprised at this point. I think that's the theme for 2022, bridge hacks. So to be really specific, there is a bridge between Ethereum and Binance called the BSC Token Hub. The BSC Token Hub was attacked, and basically the hacker signed up to become a validator on the bridge and then minted themselves 2 million BNB tokens and made off with those tokens. So the tokens they made off with were worth about 570 million at the time. So they then deposited the BNB that they newly created into Venus, which is the lend borrow protocol on Binance Smart Chain, and withdrew stable coins, which they then sent to other chains, including Ethereum and Phantom and some other ones, which is why at the time, nobody could really figure out what was going on. A lot of us were on Twitter like, oh, we think there's been a hack, but we don't know, and there's money moving around. But yes, indeed, somebody did manage to steal this money. Since they did mint these tokens out of thin air, no user funds were actually affected, which I guess is great, better than the last couple of bridge hacks. And the other good thing I guess that happened is that the validators on Binance Smart Chain paused the network, which further stopped withdrawals and allowed a recovery of most of these assets. They think the hacker only got away with $100 million. Of course, the other controversy that's now come up is that Binance is fairly centralized in terms of validators. So everybody's looking around like, okay, so is this really a decentralized chain? But like I said, very exciting. Good to see that the hacker was sort of thwarted. it's kind of up to the authorities and everybody else now to see if they can recover the rest of the assets that were stolen off to Ethereum and Phantom and other chains. But yeah, that is unfortunately based on this. BNB is now down 8.8% for the week. All right, next up, in some better news, we have Maker. MakerDAO is a decentralized stablecoin issuer. And last week, they actually invested $500 million off its balance sheet into US treasuries and corporate bonds. And yes, you read that right. A DeFi protocol has invested into traditional, the traditional markets. So basically the goal was, for Maker, they took $500 million of DAI that was just sitting idly on their balance sheet, and they used it to make these purchases. The goal was to really diversify their balance sheet and revenue lines while also spreading the usage of DAI in traditional financial markets. I don't know if you remember the last time I talked about Maker, but they've been doing some pretty interesting things trying to get involved in the rest of the financial markets. They also have been working with I think it's they are also working with a U.S. bank on issuing loans via Maker, using this bank's assets. So that was like another kind of key milestone thing that they've been doing, is like offering credit facilities to banks that then lend out assets via MakerDAO. So definitely some great progress in terms of bridging the traditional financial system with the digital assets system. Maker so far is up 17% on the news, but it has been ripping even higher. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, last up, we have Huobi token. So Huobi is, so the Huobi exchange, which is one of the larger exchanges used to be based out of China. The founder, Leon Li, who has been reportedly shopping his stake in the company for several months, managed to finally seal the deal, and he sold his entire stake to a company called About Capital. After some digging, some reporters found that About Capital is actually majority funded by Justin Sun, the founder of Layer 1 protocol Tron. So Sun refuted these allegations that he is not now the owner of this new stake in Huobi. However, he was appointed to Huobi's global advisory board. So it seems that going forward, Justin Sun and Tron may have more influence in Huobi's operations than previously. For context, Huobi has about 2% of the overall centralized exchange market share, which has definitely dipped in the last few years following China's crackdown on crypto trading. And they did 64 billion in volumes in the last month. So still definitely massive exchange, still a ton of influence. Huobi's soared on the news. They're up almost 30% on the week. And Tron, meanwhile, has actually barely moved. It's down 1.2% for the week. All right, that's all I have for you guys this week. Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed our insights. Tune in here again next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific to hear what's driving token prices.